Hey everyone, this is Jason with Pater DFS. We are back for week two of going over the Tuesday main slate. We're going to take a look at the models, really what direction they wanted us to go in tonight. We're going to take a look at where ownership landed, and we're also going to take a look at the contest simulations to see really if you want to, what you can take for, future slates, how to use it, how to make decisions. And I'm going to take you through more my process tonight, especially tonight on an 11 game slate. This was definitely a much harder slate. Pitching, across the board is almost dead already, for a lot of different, a lot of chalk pitchers are kind of deceased already. So, yeah, let's jump right into it. I'm going to walk everybody through the models today, and we'll take a look at what what they wanted us to do. So first things first, I have our scoring percentage tab up here, and what I have is our 8+ runs. This is sorted by 8+ runs, and you can see that this is a gigantic, massive slate. So at the top of the list, we have the LA Dodgers, who had 24% chance to score 8 runs or more on the slate today. And they also showed at pretty, even leverage, right? So you could play them with some chalk. You could play them with a more high leverage stack. You could play them with chalk pitching. As long as you don't play them with both chalk pitching and a chalk secondary stack, you're probably in a good spot if you played the Dodgers tonight. Followed by that, we had the Yankees, the Angels, the Rangers, Baltimore, Houston, Tampa Bay. So we have a pretty big log jam here, right? Like for all these secondary and tertiary stacks that we can consider. And even from that too, as you go down here, there's only, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, out of the top 10 teams, there's 10%, there's 10% probability separating the top team and the 10th team in these standings. So honestly, slates like this, you can really play whoever you want. This is something that really, in my opinion, is essential, especially when you're building for your contest. When I sort by highest owned stacks, we have LA. So LA, even being the highest owned stack collectively, is still going to give you, it's not going to hurt your lineup. It's not going to help your lineup. It all depends on who you play them with. When I sort by the worst leverage stacks in the slate, we have the Athletics, who are off to a really good start. Atlanta, who Austin Riley hit another home run. Shocker. Haven't done much since. We got the Cubs, who personally is a team that I'm going to be very invested in tonight. They make up a lot of my portfolio. The Tampa Bay Rays, who, last night just absolutely broke the slate in half. And Baltimore, Detroit. And then you have some other stacks that are, Chicago, Kansas City, the Angels, that are all, minute negative leverage. When you sort by highest leverage, we have the San Diego Padres, which is very interesting tonight because they're going up against the Chicago Cubs, and San Diego Padres are pitching a gas can of a pitcher in Randy Vasquez. And Chicago is actually, is it bad? I didn't even. Oh yeah, it's Shota Imanaga, who's actually pretty good, but he's got some home run issues to start the year. He's given up a little bit more power. But we have San Diego as the highest leverage stack on the slate, followed by the Rockies, the Astros, the Milwaukee Brewers, who, in my opinion, is some really, really, I want to bring up this point because in our Discord the other day, we were talking about how James specifically was actually talking about how Tariq Skubal, highest owned pitcher on the slate. And, with the Dodgers being also projected chalk later in the slate, you had a really tough decision to make, right? You could either attack Skubal or you could play Skubal. And if Skubal's dead, then you have to get off the Dodgers for the Padres, the Rockies, want some team like that. I actually thought something very similar today with Jack Flaherty. And I don't think Jack Flaherty is nearly the, the pitcher that Skubal is. It's not that. But he was coming in at some places I was seeing close to, 27, 28% owned. I know we had him owned in the 30s. So I thought taking a mini stack or even a full stack against him was actually pretty sharp today. So, and right now what it's looking like is, yeah, he's not doing too hot. He's got, he's got, 3 earned runs, 3 Ks, 1 walk, 5 hits against through 4 innings against Milwaukee. And yeah, so if you did that, you probably are off to a good start right now. So that's just something I like to look at here. One interesting stack that I wanted to point to today that really just made no sense to me why they weren't getting ownership, and that's the New York Yankees. Like, I know 43% owned, you think like, okay, like that's still something, but for them to be half as owned as LA and less than 5% a 5% less chance to score 8 runs or more. I kind of thought the Yankees were really, really solid, especially going up against Michael Wacha, who's a pitcher who pitches to contact. He's not a big high strikeout guy. He doesn't miss a lot of bats. So if things were to really go well for the Yankees, they would. I had a feeling that they would do really well. And, come to look at it, end of the 6th inning, they got 4 runs up, no home runs, but that's okay. So just want to give everybody a look under the hood of my process and, some of the things that I looked at. I was heavily invested today I have a lot of the Angels. I have a lot of the Rangers. I have Houston. I have a lot of New York. I have a ton of the Mets, and I'm going to explain why in a little bit. And so far, my Mets minis are off to a really, really strong start. Outside of that, Cleveland made up a little bit of my portfolio, the Athletics. And let's take a look now we'll take a look at some pitching options, actually. So pitching options tonight were really, really hard. This was a really, really tough pitching slate. And it's not for the lack of options. It's because you have so many options and you could poke holes in really every single pitcher that, is on the slate, right? So when we sort by median here, we see Hunter Brown as the highest median. He's 2xing his salary, a little bit more than that, actually. At $10K, he's very expensive. Max Fried, also more than 2xing his salary. Jeffrey Springs, who, came in much higher owned than projected here. But overall, we had a lot of options. So on big slates like this, I like to do a few things. Number one, the first thing I want to look at is this top finish percentage. And I want to see which pitchers. Oh, wow. I do not have it sorted to only pitchers. Whoops. There we go. I want to take a look at which pitchers have the highest chance at being the top scoring pitcher on the slate. So you'll see really quickly Hunter Brown, Max Fried, Springs, Flaherty, Schellenbach, then McGill, Kikuchi, Gausman, Landon Knack. You see Landon Knack down here as there's granted he's really, really cheap, but there's a lot more pitchers that seem like they could be in better spots than him. And ownership was pretty high for a guy like that when you had all these options. So that's one thing I like to look at on really big slates. The second thing I like to look at is this 2x percentage. Shout out to Pablo. He called us out in the Discord a year or two ago, and this has been really just, this is just a staple of my process. I want to look and see essentially which pitchers are the most reliable value. So here you see Jeffrey Springs at 57.6%. On most slates, we usually have, I'd say, anywhere from like 3 to 4, sometimes 5 pitchers, even on smaller slates that have a 2x higher than 50%. Today we only have 1. So in Jeffrey Springs. So I did hitch my wagon to a lot of Jeffrey Springs tonight. And honestly, it's not going great right now. My hope is that he can maybe get some more Ks. Maybe he gets into the 5th inning, gets to the 5th inning with a lead and then maybe pulls out a win. Overall, though, I thought Springs today, if I was going to go safe with upside, that's where I would go. Second, we have Quinn Priester. Quinn Priester is a pitcher that made up a lot of my portfolio today, too. This spot, especially against the Detroit Tigers, they came off a shellacking yesterday of who do they? Oh, that Alexander guy. Yeah, Tyler Alexander. He just absolutely sucked. Quinn Priester, high ground ball pitcher. We have him projected he was actually closer to 14 before the last updates at 6,600, 4.5, 5% was roughly what he's been at all day. I like those odds. Like, he's just a guy that I'm not playing him to go get me 30. I'm playing him to get me, 15 to 18 on a ceiling day. And then maybe he creeps up into the 20s if things go well. Right now he's got a little bit of a lead too. So maybe he could pull out a win if he can get through the 5th inning unscathed. So that's why I did that. Hunter Brown, I have a little bit of him just because he's very, very low owned and he's been very good to start the year. Tough strikeout matchup though. So not somebody I really loved. Max Fried was a guy that I had a little bit of, you're going to see later. Our Sims really, really like Max Fried just for like the sheer amount of bats we had today and the sheer amount of like high end hitters were available. I didn't find myself paying up a lot outside of Springs, and Springs isn't even expensive, but my combinations today were a lot of, Springs, Priester, Springs, Morton. And my best lineup right now is actually a hedge against Charlie Morton. But Charlie Morton here, similar projection to Quinn Priester. He had a little bit of ownership. So that's the other thing too, is that if you wanted to just pivot from Morton to somebody, it was Priester, and you don't have to change your lineup construction. Landon Knack, I maybe have a share of. I definitely have some Flaherty and McGill, and that is not going well right now for either of them. Every single pitcher that McGill got one of his earned runs taken away. So so maybe he's not so dead yet through 5 innings. Hopefully the Mets can maybe take a lead or something, and then they can, maybe get a win. But overall, that's where I went today. I didn't want to play Pepio. I know a lot of people were high on Pepio because of what you saw Shane Baz do last night, hence this ownership here. But Shane Baz is a much different pitcher than Ryan Pepio. Bailey Ober is somebody who I saw getting ownership, and this is why I really, really wanted to attack him tonight. I'll get to that in a second, but that made up all of my pitching pool. So to get into why I thought it made a lot of sense to attack a guy like Bailey Ober tonight. So these are our research sheets, and these are sheets you can find on the site. I live and die in these. James will tell you, in every single live stream when he brings up the research sheets like this is where I live. I sleep here. I eat here. I do everything here. I live in these sheets. Reason being, so there's a few stats here I like to look at. One is our true average, where I can see essentially every single pitcher's true average baseline. That maybe it's kind of, I equate it to when people look at things like an XFIP or something like that. Granted, it may be a little bit different than that, how James calculates it, but really it's the average that they should be giving up, or that, it's more what it maybe should regress to. I'll let him give you that, but I live by this. This just breeds. You look at this, you go, okay, this guy's going to give up hits eventually. If he doesn't tonight, it's coming soon. Same thing with expected batting average, but I like to look at true average. That's the first thing I look at, and you'll see right here, Eric Fetty, that put me on Houston immediately. Connor Gillespie, he's not on the slate. Randy Vasquez in Chicago, that put me on them, especially because his walk rates are disastrous. He doesn't strike anybody out. His slugging is really, really bad. His expected batting average is really bad. So that put me a lot. I put me in the Cubs big time tonight. But I want to show you guys something pretty interesting. So when I go and I want to look at Bailey Ober specifically, 22% K rate, 10% walk rate. This isn't good. This is kind of meh. True average is fine. 250 slugging, 0.44, not great. Expected batting average, just about as bad as it should be. But in the sample, his expected home runs. This is my favorite column to look at because it's a really good, I guess you could say, barometer of how much power they should have been giving up. It's definitely, home runs given up in the sample, but even if you want to just equate it to how much power they should have been given up, that's totally fine too. Bailey Ober in the sample that James has given up 6 home runs. He should have given up 8. So when I look at that compared to who was on the slate, you have Shota Imanaga, who I do think he's a little bit better than what these numbers are showing. But you know what? Against San Diego, it's possible they have some killers in that lineup. That makes sense. Kikuchi here, I think everybody in our Discord loved the Rangers today because the Angels bullpen's not good. And Kikuchi, high true average to both sides of the plate, it seems. Expected batting average is low, but when he gives up hits, he should be giving up bombs. And then there's Bailey Ober. So I also can sort this by versus righty and versus lefties. So when I look at them versus righties, expected home runs, you have Shota at the top right here. So a lot of damage should be coming from the right side of the plate. Kikuchi, also right side of the plate. Lodolo's not on the slate. Bailey Ober. Bailey Ober here, true average, 2.250. His expected slugging is 0.55. This is probably the highest on the slate, if not one of the highest. Yeah, outside of Sean Burke for Chicago, this is the absolute highest. So back to Bailey Ober, expected batting average against right-handed hitters, 0.32. This is very, very high. Expected home runs, should have been given up 9. He's only given up 7. His ex-home for plate appearance, 0.06, is very, very high. So that right there put me on the likes of, Pete Alonso. You look at Mark Vientos, you look at Luis Torrens, you look at these guys that can maybe get to him. And I'm starting to think as pre-slate kind of progresses, like, okay, maybe this is a spot I want to attack. Maybe it's not. I look at versus lefties. I start by expected home runs. You have Jake Irvin, not on the slate, Castillo not on the slate, Hunter Brown against St. Louis, which in theory could be scary because they have a lot of lefties. You have Eric Fetty going up against Houston. They'd like them. Bailey Ober. So Bailey Ober should have been given up 7 home runs in the sample. He should have given up that. He's only given up 5. So I'm seeing that he has home run regression coming to both sides of the plate. His strikeout rate is lower on this side. His walk rate is higher. His true average is higher. His expected slugging is not bad at all, and his batting average is low. But he should have been given up more power and more home runs. So now when I go and look at the hitters, I go and I sort by, you can do current team stats, do player stats. So when I sort by expected slugging for this slate, Yankees, Mets are the second team, second highest on the slate in expected slugging as a team. X1 for plate appearance. They're at 5. They're tied for the highest on the slate with the Athletics, the Angels, and the Orioles. Then I also like to look at event for plate appearance. So this accounts for everything. Hits, home runs, steals, walks, everything. The Mets are still showing as one of the top teams on the slate. Seattle, San Francisco, not on the slate. Miami, not on the slate. Now, the Mets are a top 5-6 team in that metric too. So now what I go and look at, I'm going to go look at the player stats, and then I'm going to sort by the Mets here. So when I go look at the Mets, I'm going to see I have all the players here. Expected slugging. Look at this. Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Luis Torrens, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte. They have 7 out of their top 9 hitters that have an expected slugging above league average in this matchup against Bailey Ober. Also, look at their expected batting average. You have 3 guys who should be hitting north of 300, and you have 2 guys that are close to 300. You go and look at the event for plate appearance, Lindor and Soto, probably because Lindor can steal a bag. Juan Soto walks a lot. He also doesn't strike out a ton. Brandon Nimmo can steal a bag or 2. He can also hit. Starling Marte can steal a bag. Acuna can steal a bag. And then here's the one thing I love. The X home run for plate appearance. Juan Soto, Vientos, Pete Alonso, Nimmo, Lindor all should be hitting home runs 5% of the time. 5% of their plate appearance, they should be going yard. And tonight, who do we have going yard? We had Juan Soto and Pete Alonso already go yard tonight. Could that, progress into something more, and hopefully some other guys can do it too? Sure. But that made up a lot of my minis tonight. We're grabbing Pete Alonso Vientos, Pete Alonso Lindor, Pete Alonso Soto. That's where a lot of my minis went. Another thing I wanted to point out is the Chicago Cubs. So they're down, they have some injuries right now, but this is why I really was into them tonight. Also against Randy Vasquez, you're probably thinking like, Jason, Randy Vasquez sucks. Like, why do I have to, you don't have to justify that to me. Like they're not anything, shocker. You're picking the Cubs. Well, here's why I really like them. You had Gage Workman in the starting lineup. This is a very small sample size, but 2,300 batting ninth. You really like to see that. Miguel Amaya batting batting eighth. And Miguel Amaya has been pretty good to start this season. Every catcher who wears a Cubs uniform apparently has been really good. I look at this expected slugging for this entire team, and they have 6 guys over a 400 expected slugging. X1 for plate appearance, Kyle Tucker, Ian Happ. A really good chance Kyle Tucker hits a home run tonight. Just saying, right? Like, and granted, is that really saying there's a great chance? No, but he's in a great spot to hit. Ian Happ's in a great spot to hit. Michael Busch has been sort of raking. The event for plate appearance, though, is really where I get excited, though. Kyle Tucker, Gage Workman, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, and Happ all steal bases, and you could definitely run on Randy Vasquez. So that's why I wanted to, make them a really, really core part of my portfolio today. Wow, Max Fried actually ended up doing really well. Okay, that's good to know. All right, so Max Fried is actually in my hedge lineup with the Cleveland Guardians. And the last team that I wanted to look at and really just show you kind of where I wanted to go tonight was the Angels. We'll start there first. So I don't have to tell you that Mike Trout has just been absolutely fucking raking. So is Kyron Paris. Expected slugging, very good on these 4. Sean Wells been hitting very well. He's actually been hitting with some power too. Joe Adell has a lot of power. Rengifo likes to steal bases. Sort by event for plate appearance, Trout, Paris, Rengifo. This is some of the highest on the slate. Joe Adell gets on, he'll steal a base. X1 for plate appearance, Trout, Paris, Soler, Ward. As if I see guys at 5% or more, like I'm very, very interested. And this is not trying to predict outcomes, but these are some really good power hitters that you can look at. And last but not least is when I'm selecting teams that I want to stack outside of just the scoring percentages column, I like to sort by current team stats, and then I like to sort by salary. So when I go here, I'll sort by salary. If it's a smaller slate, I'll sort by the specific teams on it. And what I'll do is I'll go and take a look at teams' expected slugging and event for plate appearance. New York, the most expensive team, great expected slugging, extra for plate appearance, okay. Event for PA, pretty good. You have the Dodgers, a little bit lower than you'd like to expect from a team that's going to be pretty chalky. The Athletics, also very expensive against Burke, but their numbers back it up. The Mets here, 490, 280, expected home run of 5, event for plate appearance of 8, K rate 22%, not that high at all. Expected batting average of 280. The Cubs right below them. But this is where, regardless of outcome, this is where I think this is so valuable. Look at Houston. Houston, average salary of 36.22, one of the lowest on the slate. Going up against Eric Fetty, who has a really high true average of almost 300. Their expected batting average in this split against him, 300 of X slug of 470. Event for plate appearances at 6, so they got some guys that could have some upside. Overall, I really, really think it was a good idea to play the Astros tonight, even if it didn't work out. And honestly, it seems like it's probably not going to work out because the Astros just never really get it done. But it's all about your process, and then you want to be right when you're going to be paid off the most. And seeing that Houston ownership today and what it was projected to be, honestly, I don't regret doing that at all. And also, too, when you look at Fetty's stat line right now, he's got 4 hits, 3 walks, and 4 Ks. So Houston just hasn't really made him pay. So you don't want to be attached to the results here. You want to really be attached to your process. And if you're making decisions that when things go right, it's going to pay off for you, hugely. So before we get to, where ownership has landed for most of these teams tonight, I want to walk you through also the contest sims. So our contest sims, I have 2 tabs up that you'll see. One is for small field, very sharp contest. So if you're playing the 250, you're playing the 121 single entry, you're playing the 88. Overall, you look at starting pitcher exposures. Hunter Brown gives us the biggest edge in these contests tonight, followed by Max Fried, Jeffrey Springs. After that, it's pretty destitute. You get minor edge on Gossman, and everyone else is a negative. So if you're in small field tonight and you're going just by what the sims are saying, you probably should have just played a combination of Brown, Springs, or Fried. And it really looks like Fried did his job. So see what else we can find. I mean, Hunter Brown right now only has 1 K. He's given up 4 hits and 2 walks. So if he doesn't start K'ing people quick, he's not going to pay off. Jeffrey Springs, obviously. Actually, he came back with another K in the bottom of the 4th inning. If he limits damage and gets through the top of the 5th, he could be in line for a win. So take that for what it's worth. But overall, not great. The worst pitchers in the sim are Pepio, Ober, Charlie Morton, Landon Knack, and Flaherty. So this is why I wanted to also attack a guy like Bailey Ober, why I thought, a stack against Jack Flaherty was kind of sharp, is look at this ownership in these contests and the negative edge. So they don't show up much in winning lineups. When I go look at teams now, the Angels are the highest exposed team, followed by the Dodgers, the Rockies, Baltimore, Texas, Tampa Bay. And, outside of this, you probably should have started with some combination for your main stack. Actually, you probably should start your main stack with either the Angels, the Dodgers, the Rockies, or the Orioles, and you probably should have went Texas or Tampa Bay for minis. In the Sims, there's something very important that I want everybody to start doing. It's looking at the overall exposures tab. So you may see here team exposures and see a percentage here, but what you're not going to really see unless you go look in here is each player, how much they're showing up in that sim, in winning lineups. So, for instance, Shohei Ohtani for the Dodgers. Dodgers is one of the the highest exposed teams. Shohei Ohtani is 22%. that shows up. When I sort by teams and I go down to the Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani, Chris Taylor, Andy Paz. Outside of those three, no one shows up more than 10% of the time. It's also pretty important. Let's say the Yankees were showing up a ton. Max Fried is taking up a lot of that exposure. You go to Oakland. Well, I mean, I keep calling them Oakland, but you go to the Athletics here. Jeffrey Springs is taking up most of that exposure and no one else. So other teams, the Angels, the Dodgers, Colorado, I like to sort by edge in the overall exposures. I ignore the pitchers just because that you have your own column for them. But Jorge Mateo, Baltimore was a popular stack tonight. He's a cheap, 9-hole hitter playing for them. Rengifo on the Angels, Anderson on the Angels, Chris Taylor, Mickey Moniak, Kyron Paris. So you're already seeing that like the Angels were probably a really good starting point in small field. You're getting the biggest edge in this contest in high dollar small field by starting with the Angels and specifically that combo. I like to sort by team, and then I can see in each team their exposure, their projected ownership, and how much of an edge they give you. This is not to make you pick individual players, but just more to show and illustrate that certain teams have, guys that are in multiple lineups. So yeah, like if you started a stack in small field with Rengifo, Tim Anderson, Kylan Paris, Mike Trout, and then you went one of like Adele, Ward, d'Arnaud, Soler, you're getting a 7-hitter, a 9-hitter, a 3-hitter, a 2-hitter, and then you can go get a 1, you can go get a 5, you can go get an 8. So you can really, correlate and stack this any which way you want. So in small field, that's what we should have been doing. We go to large field now. So large field, I set this to large and below average. I'm using the mini max as an example for that. Anybody that's playing the lottery, the mini max, the $4, the $1 150 max, this is the type of setting you would put on that you would use. Starting pitcher here, I'm still showing Hunter Brown. Edge is a little bit different just compared to small field. In small field, we have an edge of 52% to play Hunter Brown, and exposure showing up 60% of the time in winning lineups, versus in large field, 53% of the time in winning lineups, and an edge of 44%. There's Springs, there's Fried, Flaherty, again, negative leverage. Pepio, Ober, Morton, Knack, yep, lowest leverage in large field. Hunter Brown, Springs, Fried, Schwellenbach showing some positive leverage, Gaussman, and Feltner is pretty negligible. When I go to teams here again, the Angels again, but now some more teams come into the fray in large field. So we had Colorado before. Tampa Bay is on par with LA, Colorado, LAD, and Texas. We like Texas a lot in the Discord today against Kikuchi and his splits. Then there's Baltimore, and then there's kind of everybody else. So this is, if you were starting large field today, you probably should have a main stack or even a mix of LA, Colorado, Tampa Bay, LAD, and Texas. You want to consider Baltimore fine, the Mets and Houston okay. Anything below that, probably a little too cute, and probably doesn't get you the build that you want. So overall, that's a really, good look into our Sims today, and that's where they wanted us to go. Now to take a look at some ownership and see where that landed. First, we're going to talk about small field. So I played in the 88 tonight. As you can tell, I got some work to do. But overall, I went with Jeffrey Springs, 31%. That's okay. I'll gladly take that anytime. Quinn Priester, 2.2% owned, and he's having a good game right now. So, you do like to see that. And here, as you can see, I went with a Angels 5-man and Mets mini. So I hit, Pete Alonso, which was really, really good. I didn't have anything from Lindor yet. Hopefully the Angels get going. We're in the bottom of the 4th already, so I really need them to get going. But overall, I came in much lower owned than I really thought I was going to be here. So not really loving that too much, right? Like I like that it's low owned, and if it goes off, it goes off. But I don't like it because I also think I may be off the beaten path a little bit. Maybe there's going to be some ownership taken by the Dodgers later. Probably Baltimore's probably heavy in this contest. In this one, Charlie Morton and Priester. So this was my double pay down that I was talking about in the Discord earlier. Morton got rocked late. He actually avoided some damage for a little while and then just got absolutely smoked. Priester's doing fine. And here I went with the Yankees and Astros mini. So I went big bats here. Judge, Bellinger, Jordan, Altuve, Austin Wells for catchers, not cheap. Overall, not doing so great, right? And here, this is pretty laughable. Granted, half my lineup hasn't played yet. Charlie Morton and Springs, combo here, a little bit more of a chalkier pitching combo. And I am going a 5-man Chicago with a Texas midi. So overall, Jung 20, Simeon 12. I'm probably and I won't cherry a one off to leverage some Flaherty chalk. So overall, probably not going to be a good night for me in Smallfield, but we'll see. I do have Chicago left here. If ownership projections think that Chicago is going to be much higher owned, I may have to consider a pivot off of them. As of right now, though, I don't think they're going to be. So I don't really need to go pivot. Maybe I want to pivot to like the Colorado if I want to get really drastic, or maybe I want to pivot to the Padres even. That should be something I maybe consider. But overall, I think I might let that ride. In large field. So large field, I got a little bit of green here. So this was my hedge lineup that I took against Charlie Morton. Played Max Fried with Hunter Brown. So I followed the Sims here in this lineup for large field. Hunter Brown starting to K people. Nice. And Cleveland, not scoring fantastic outside of Quan, but everybody's contributing. And I played them with an LA Angels mini. I really expected the Angels to be a little bit more popular. I think our ownership had them as a top 5 team in the slate in terms of ownership. So I'm a little surprised at that. But let me go look and see if maybe there's something to the Angels just not being chalky collectively. Maybe there's one or two guys. Let's go take a look at this tab. Okay, yeah. So Mike Trout near 10, Ward near 10, Soler 8, Darno near 10. So collectively, they're up there, but not one person is mega chalk. So okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Some other builds that I got to. Another Hunter Brown Max Fried build. This one was in the Houston and the Angels. So far, I'm blanking. Not good. Here, Jeffrey Springs and Priester. This is the same lineup that I played with my small field where I went Angels and a Mets mini. I have Flaherty and Springs, so I played some Flaherty too, and this was my chalk pitching combo. And I played them with the Angels and the Athletics. And honestly, I'm very happy about. Granted, I get Flaherty sucked tonight, and Springs is probably not going to end as great as he really should have. Not have that great of a game, but I feel really accomplished with this ownership here that I have enough leverage that if things go right and pitching goes right, I could have a big night. So something to consider here. This one says players game not started. That's funny considering it's my own lineup. So don't know what that is, but actually, let me refresh here. Okay, so that's my Cubs lineup. So this one, if Flaherty was doing a little bit better, I would have been really excited for this. Torrens, I hit the Mets mini, with Soto. I did play Nimmo here too, Alonzo Springs. So I won I won a 5 here with the Mets. Wow, I can't read. So Alonzo, Soto, Alonzo's up again right now. Hopefully we can get Torrens going, some other guys. Felt pretty good about that. Here's another one with the Yankees with Priester and Morton with Yankees Houston. Here's another one with Springs and McGill. McGill was another guy that the sheets liked a lot today. And overall, he made it through the 5th inning. So if the Mets can score some runs here, he may get into a win. But I played this with Springs and McGill. I knew they were going to be a little bit higher owned. I played them with a Milwaukee mini against Flaherty. And then I played Tampa Bay and Milwaukee stack. That's where I went. Not great so far. Houston, not good. And so on and so forth. So that's where a lot of my ownership went tonight. I also have I have a ton of the Cubs left to go. You'll see some of the PMRs down here. Those are definitely Cubs lineups for sure. Cubs minis. So I'm very overexposed to Chicago tonight. I may go in and pivot some of those, and we'll see how that goes. But overall, that's where I landed tonight. I'm going to really be curious to see what Chicago's ownership comes in at. Looking at our sheets here, they collectively don't look that owned, so I'm not too worried about it. But all right, this was our Tuesday night recap. I'll be back next week to do the same thing again. See everybody in the Discord and hope somebody hits for a trophy tonight.